Welcome to this edition of The Bigger Game, from Surviving to Thriving, with our guest today is Becky Sampson from Only Subpoenas. Becky, tell us a little about Only Subpoenas, if you just a couple sentences, if you could.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show today, which is awesome. I appreciate you having me on. Well, Only Subpoenas, we are actually, I believe, the only one out there that only does subpoenas for divorce. Well, I should say for any attorney, any attorneys, we do the outsourcing of the subpoena work. So we do compliance as well as the prep work for it. So 1 out of every 3 subpoenas gets rejected. And when you work with our company, it's 100% compliant or they don't pay. So
it goes through or they don't pay.
Absolutely. Yep.
Wow, look at that.
Doesn't get rejected.
Excellent. Yeah. So, the name of the podcast is The Bigger Game. And I guess in one way that is the bigger game, right? When
it is actually.
Subpoenas that don't, that get accepted and don't get rejected. What does the bigger game mean to you?
That's a really interesting question, because when you brought that up, it's just like, I am somebody, and I believe that you are this way as well, but that anytime I do anything in life, it's got to have a purpose, and it's got to have a much bigger reason or why, and it needs to be more of a win-win-win kind of situation. And that to me is a bigger game. Doesn't just look at what's in it for me. It's what's in it for the people that work for me, with the people that I serve, to the people they serve. How can I impact or make an impact on all those levels of people instead of just what's for me? And I believe that is one of the things that really drives me in this business, is because of how much it helps and serves the people around me. So yeah, keeping that in the forefront of my mind is very, very important for playing the bigger game.
So when you look at that purpose and the things you just said, take us through your journey. Maybe some nuggets here that we can all take away. How does that version of the bigger game, your version of the bigger game, apply as you take us through some specific situations in your life or whatever, your business, that would give us a sense of that?
Yeah. I appreciate that question. I think, I did another podcast this morning and that I was a guest on, and it was actually a friend of mine that I've known for many, many, many years. We met back in 2010 when a lot of things were happening in my life that, so I lost 100, I don't know, did I tell you this? I don't know, but I've lost 130 pounds back in 2010. So I hit my goal weight for the first time. I got divorced from my first husband, and I quit my job that I had for 6.5 years, all in the same month of July, 2010. So that was like a really big reset in my life. And that's when I really took a step back in my life and was like, okay, how do I play this bigger game? I used to say to people all the time, what you choose to do matters, and the impact that you make, and that every single one of us matters. And so as I was kind of looking at the things that I could do in my life to help people, I started going out and speaking and doing radio, and eventually did some TV, but radio was a big part of me getting out there and helping play that bigger game, because I was kind of one of those people that kind of stayed on the sidelines. And it was fun to be with a girlfriend of mine today that I met during that time, because we both were in a speaker group where we were learning how to speak. And I remember this really, really big speaker turned to me during a Christmas dinner, and he goes, so what do you talk about? Like he traveled all over the world and spoke. And I'm like, I don't know. I just lost 130 pounds and I don't have my message yet. He's like, well, you better figure that out so that you can go make a career of it and go impact people. And I was like, okay. So it took me on quite a journey of me being able to be in the self-development world and coaching. I was doing a lot of health and wellness webinars and programs. And I was just one of those people. I've always been this way my whole life, but when people reach out, I'm going to help them. I'm going to help process things. And at that point, I had some experience behind my belt in healing from a food disorder. And that was something that was a huge part of my life. And at that point, it was kind of like the radio and my whole experience just kind of catapulted me into the self-development world. And I did a lot of different things during that time.
So
But
when you say catapulted, right?
Yeah.
And you use the word reset and you use the word catapult. Can you
Yeah.
expand on that a little bit for us? When you say a reset, like, I'm going through the motions of life every day, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. Obviously at some level I'm fulfilled, some level I'm not fulfilled. Obviously you got to the point that you were not fulfilled and decided to do a complete reset.
Yeah.
How does one like, I don't know, maybe it's courage, maybe whatever that missing element is, right? For people, how does someone who's interested in doing that actually just do it, right? Because it's pretty scary, pretty risky, right?
Yeah. Well, it creates a lot. I had to stop and take a look at my life. And for me, it was back in February of 2009. A girlfriend of mine and I were walking around a mall, and she's now 86 years old or 85. So she's a bit older than I am, and she's 4'11". I'm 5'7". So like there's a huge difference. And she turned to me and she goes, "Becky, I've had 4 cookies and I need like a detox." And I was like, "What?" Like I've battled with my weight my whole entire life. So my reset kind of started that day when she was like, "Hey, why don't you come with me to this conference, this 12-step conference?" I didn't know what 12-step was. I was going to go support her that next day. And I wasn't looking for any big, huge awakening. But we went down. I remember at the time I said to my husband, I said, "I don't know, Pat wants me to go down and, be with her during this thing." And the first thing that happened when I walked in those doors, we walked in a little bit late, and there was this lady in the front of the room. She was telling my story. And I remember thinking to myself, like I was writing my name and I stopped right in the middle of writing the paperwork that I was, and I immediately looked up at her and I was like, "What?" Like, nobody's talked about like the way that I used to eat like that, and be able to talk so openly about it. And next thing I knew, I was looking around a whole room of hundreds of people who had been able to do something that I've never been able to do, which is to lose my weight and keep it off. Right? Like I could lose it all day long, but to keep it off. So that was really the beginning of my journey of really awakening, because I left that day. I remember turning to my girlfriend and I said, "I don't know what this is and who these crazy people are, but I need to do whatever they're doing." And she goes, "No, no, no, you Becky, you'll be ready when you know you're ready." And I'm like, "No, no, I'm ready right now."
So it's a choice. So what you're speaking to is in order to do that reset, it's just a choice. I mean, you're obviously, your friend said something, and subconsciously or consciously, however you did it, you chose, right? Like you stepped into that world. I think that's the only way to really do it, is to be inspired and choose to step into that reset.
And you never know when those moments are going to come. I had no idea. I had no clue that when I said yes to her going down there to support her, that my life would completely change. Because when I came back from that conference is when I started in recovery for food addiction, and got a sponsor and started the program. And it wasn't perfect. Everyone thinks, "Oh, it's just this perfect 14 months and lost 130 pounds and my whole life is perfect." No, that's not, I had my own journeys and my own struggles. But however, when I was going through that process of writing every day and processing, what got me to this point, to all the different aspects of my life, I started realizing how abusive the marriage I was in. And I speak very openly. It wasn't just abuse to me. I was abusive to him. And so I had to clean that part up. And then once I did that, I mean, obviously that created some difficulties in our relationship. And we actually did, my former husband, my first husband, and I did a radio show 3 years after our divorce and talked very openly about the physical, emotional, and spiritual abuse that we did to each other. And by the way, that's on my website if you want. I'm going to upload it here today, but there's an actual audio that you can listen to. It's called Healing After Divorce. And so as we were going through this process and I was losing the weight, I also was losing the old belief systems. I was losing and being more aware of consciously what I was creating in my life. And I would make choices at that point to say, hey, I'm not going to allow this anymore. And so inevitably, it ended up in a divorce. I also ended up leaving my job because there were some unhealthy behaviors between in that situation, let me just say. So I really, it just naturally took me to that place where I'm like, okay, I want to help people, but I didn't know how to help people. I just knew that I had moved to a place that I wasn't comfortable in my former place anymore. And that's what my ex-husband said in our interview is he says, Becky, you were moving too quickly, through this process and I couldn't keep up. And that's his own admission, right? So, and it gave me a new opportunity and a new platform to really discover who I really am, because having all the weight gone now and having all this attention from men was a whole new experience for me, because I never thought I was beautiful ever. And I never thought that I was smart. And so those two things I remember sitting in front of my mirror, and this is before I even knew that there was something called mirror work, but I would literally sit in front of the mirror and I would slap my face and be like, this is just a meat suit. Like, this doesn't define me, even though the world is responding to me differently. I would look in my eyes and to see my soul. I didn't blame people and men for treating me differently. I now was in a new body, a new life, a new awareness, a new way of being with people around me that actually drew people to me instead of repelled them for most of my life, which is what I
So that's interesting. So the first step was choice.
Mm-hmm.
You chose, and in giving it away to somebody else, being there in support of somebody else, right? The golden rule: I can't give it back. I can't give it away without getting it back for myself.
Right.
It may have seemed like it came from the outside, like, she said something and then, stars aligned and suddenly you found yourself in this situation. I wonder if it's the fact that at the end of the day, you chose.
Yeah.
Right.
I saw the opportunity. Yeah. And then I made a choice. I was like, wait a minute. Because I always say to people, you may not be willing right this second, but when you see the opportunity, you have a moment right there. I mean, the moment I made that decision, it changed my life. And I had no idea. I didn't see the 130 pounds off of me, right? Like I saw that it was possible, and I saw that I wanted what she had. But I didn't know that my whole life, like, it actually was going to happen, So yeah, that's what people, I always say, look, you're so sick of being sick and tired. The what?
And then ownership of the situation. And like, you took ownership with your husband,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. And it wasn't easy for me to step out of that world, because that's what I was comfortable in, right? I wasn't comfortable in this new, confident, beautiful woman that I was going into. And I had to navigate very intentional, because I didn't want to get myself into situations that would compromise who I had become at that point, because now I had boundaries. And sometimes I swung the other direction too far. I remember dating a guy and he's just like, oh my gosh, Becky, you're like, I was in the process. Actually, I was working with a counselor who is very well known now because of some problems. She's in prison, but I was working with the counselor at the time, and she was very much like, we would track every single thought that we had. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is a lot of work. This is a lot of work to be this conscious. Like, how do I feel about other people? How do I feel about myself? How am I interacting? Who am I being? you know, it took a lot of self-development or a lot of self-awareness for me to, as I say, my first husband, you know, he beat the hell out of me, which means the part of me that wasn't healthy, right? We together provided an opportunity for me to grow into the woman that I've always needed to be or wanted to be, but I didn't know how to access. Oh, I think there you go.
Now it's a matter of blessings that you see that, right? So now it's like
Yeah.
you made the choice, you took ownership of the situation, and went through this process almost in a state of wonder, not knowing how you're going to get there. You just, like you said, you saw just the possibility of it and kept taking the half steps and the steps that you knew to take in front of you and allowed like the rest to show up. It's kind of like in Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom, right? He's at the end, he's walking across, you know, that's, I don't know if you remember, if you've seen the movie, but there's that you've seen at the end, and he puts one foot down and the staircase shows up, the step shows up, then he takes the next step and the step shows up. He's not there until he puts his foot there. It's kind of like that, the wonder of that.
Well, and that's what I always say to people too, is it's a one day at a time. Like that's all I knew is 1 pound at a time and 1 day at a time. And some of the times in my life, I always have to keep reminding myself that I only have to worry about today. Like I also during that process, I said to my girlfriend before I started the program, the food program, I'm like, really? Seriously? I could never have sugar again? And I was like, what? And she's like, no, Becky, just today. I'm like, oh, okay, I can do that. I can do it just for today. And then the next day, just for today. And the next day, just for today. And you know, obviously it compounds and gets easier. With whatever it is that you're struggling with. But and I've had to use that principle over and over and over and over again in my life, especially if I'm struggling with other issues in my life, whether it's relationships or business or anything like that. It's just like, just for today, I have exactly what I need, and I can make decisions to become better.
That is really powerful. You know, 1 day at a time, one moment at a time, right? I can see the overwhelm of like, you know, no more sugar for the rest of my life. Just saying it is like, right?
Yeah.
And then just, you know, reducing it to the next step, just today.
Just today. And it doesn't matter what it is, the conflict. And I always say conflict is happening for you, not to you. So that was one of the things. It took me a while to get to the point where I saw my first husband as a gift. And I say that with all due respect, because he was a gift in a sense that I was able to find myself. He was a gift that I was able to really take a hard look at what I was choosing to do in that relationship that caused the contention and the abuse. And to be able to take back that power. And it was interesting as I started dating, these guys would be like, are you serious? Are you like for real that you're talking about this like openly about how you abused your ex-husband? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, that sounds, I wish my wife would do it. I said, well, so it takes a lot of work and accountability, and it doesn't mean that I'm perfect. It doesn't mean that I didn't have my own negative things to say or whatever. But I always say, as soon as you can get to a place of love and appreciation, gratitude, and acceptance, that's when the peace really came into my life, and I could move forward into these new relationships that I've had.
And it starts with humility, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the courage to be humble, really, and take ownership. That's amazing. So now when you look at that journey of yours as a blessing happening for you rather than to you, you know, and you've all talked about this purpose about giving it away and uplifting people is where you started the conversation. It's at the bigger game, right? The purpose.
Yeah.
Has there been anything around this part of your journey that you brought to the world in this regard?
Well, I think for me, this idea that life is happening for me is an important perspective. And now I have said there's times in my life where I'm like, yeah, I've totally got it. You know what I mean? Like I get it. And okay, I'm going through a tough time. And then there's other times where I'm like, I forget that concept. I mean, as I'm speaking it right now, I had a very difficult morning and last night. And I'm like, okay, that's right. I can do this for today and I can let it go and I can accept it. And what do I need to learn from it? And I forgot that tool that I had until I'm speaking about it right now. So just because I speak about it doesn't mean I perfected it. And so and the other thing that really helped me was to look at the things that I was going through my life, the challenges that I was having, and without judgment. Like, I'm not bad because I'm experiencing this. It's just happening. And what can I learn from it? You know, I mean, that really is the bigger game of life, right? Because I've always thought it was so fascinating, and these are like, we plan for the good things in our lives, but we don't, and we somehow act surprised when things get challenging. Like, that's what life is all about, is the challenges are what build the muscle. And the muscle needs resistance, and the resistance is opposition. So if you're wanting to go to the gym and build a certain muscle, you have to be willing to be pushed against and push and pull and, you know, do that hard work. And even though it's a short, like, you know, I was doing bodybuilding last year, you know, and I was thinking about this morning when I was at the gym. I'm like, look, it's only a temporary pain. Like, that's it. And I was like, okay, I can do 10 rounds, you know, I mean, I can do 10 sets and it will, and then it makes me stronger, but it hurts while I'm doing it. And then I get to rest, and then I got to push again. And then I do a rest. And it's such a great analogy to how do I grow my spiritual soul, is I need to be willing and to be accepting of these challenges that come my way, so that I can then make a choice. It can ruin me, or it can make me better or bitter. I know that's a cliche thing to say, but I talk about that all the time, is how I really have been very intentional about allowing these experiences to boost me up instead of tearing me down and becoming, you know, somebody that I really don't want to become.
Bitter or better? Love that.
Becky, bitter, better. Yes. It's
That's
all the
fabulous.
BBBs, right?
That's fabulous. So, you know, so now you are also taking couples through this process? Is that
Well, yeah. So I've been on the journey in the coaching world. I've done a lot of different things. When I was dating during that time, I actually wrote a book called Love Like a Lady. And it was all the things that I learned from all these guys that I had dated that were like, Becky, I wish I had this and this and this and this in a woman. And these are good men, right? And so I started like doing these workshops and teaching women, look, this is what men want, the LADY, which is love. They want to be loved and appreciated. Or A is appreciation, love and acceptance. A is appreciation. D is you need to be desirable. I mean, you can be beautiful all day long, but that doesn't mean that you need to have qualities that are desirable for these men. And the most important thing of that LADY is be yourself. Like, be comfortable in your own skin. And I know Abizer and you and I have talked about this last week, right? Because I'm not perfect. And I have internal dialogues within my own self. And being comfortable in my own skin has been a major challenge in my life. Like, from never feeling beautiful, smart, good enough. You know, a lot of people I think can relate to that, wherever that comes from. But that's been my journey. And so it's really been just till recently that I've stepped into this space of being like, look, I know who I am and the value that I bring to the world and to my own life. And that has been a really interesting journey for me, because it's talk about a bigger game. Like, if you really look at, like, we care about what people think of us when we're really young. And as we get older and older, we get a little bit more wiser when we realize it's more of an inside job than an outside job. And that to me, you know, I am very intentional every day to going, okay, Becky, What's the inside work that I need to do so that I can show up bigger, right? For the bigger game, for the people around me that I love and care for, and even for the people that I haven't even met yet. I always say, I have so many friends and I've met so many people over the years, but I say a stranger is just a friend I haven't met yet.
Yeah.
And so, and I grew up at a summer camp for kids. My dad was an amazing man who influenced so many kids' lives. And one of the things he always said is to leave wherever we camped, leave that camping spot or site better than we found it. And I know you hear this sometimes out there, but one of my greatest mottos is to leave people better than I found them. And so if people call me for support, so no, I don't officially like help people in relationships and things like that. I do have that book that eventually will be out there, but I'm the type of person that if someone calls me, I'm going to help them. If there was a call last night regarding subpoenas, this guy calls me from California. He's pro se, and he saw that I have a business doing subpoenas. I don't do them for pro se people, but I was able to share with him what worked with me in my court case that I went through, and then also referred him to somebody else that I think can help him a little bit better than I could. So I'm always looking for, I'm like, okay, get a piece of paper, here's what I have, and here's somebody else that can help you. Like, who do you need in order for you to progress in, whether it's support or whether it's a connection for your business or whatever it is? How can I leave people better than I found them? That's one of my main mottos. I think you're muted.
That is excellent. Sorry about that. That's excellent. All of those things. You talked about to me versus for me, bitter versus better, and now leaving people the better than I found them. Take all of it, and if you're willing to take us home, give us a gift we can all walk away with here. We'll wrap it all up.
Well, one of the things I was asked the other day on a podcast, kind of similar, at the very end, and it was interesting what came to me is one of my biggest things in life. If I had like that 5 minutes to leave a message with people, is no matter where you are in your life, you matter. I mean, that is, your very existence matters. Whether you are for me, it took the reason why I'm even in the subpoena business is because I went through a really bad divorce, 3.5-year divorce, representing myself mostly up against 5 attorneys. And I won. I won a fair and equitable division. Nothing more than that, just a fair and equitable division. And I used subpoenas to win that case. And so I'm really good at what I do. However, I learned through that process because my ex-husband said to me, Becky, I'm having a really hard time seeing the value that you bring to my life. And that moment, my response back to him was, here's the good news. I know the value that I bring to your life. So whether or not you choose to see it in this relationship is none of my business. And that was a really big moment for me to be able to say, hey, I do matter. I matter. I matter. My existence matters. And even when I eventually had an attorney and he said to me, and I was trying to prove all my, like, this is all the things I've done and da, da, da. And this is my second divorce, by the way. And I'm happily married, just let you know, third time is a charm. But my attorney said to me something so important. I was trying to prove all of these things of why I was entitled to certain things during the divorce. And he says, Becky, I don't care if you sat on a couch, ate bonbons, and gained 100 pounds. You are still entitled to half of, the assets that we had. And I told him, I turned right back to him and I said, look, thank you so much for not making me prove my very existence. And so as I've gone through my life and my challenges, and I've stood up for myself and everything, and every single time I talk to somebody on the phone, I want them to know that their very existence matters. And whether you feel a calling to go make a difference in the world and be a speaker or have a podcast or write a book or talk to your neighbor or be a good father or a good mother or whatever it is, that there is, that it matters what you do every day. It matters the journey and the choices that you make, because there's ripples that happen within the communities, within our families, and within the world, really.
Yeah, we have no idea where one contribution to somebody, how much of a ripple effect that has gone out. And the opposite is also true, right?
Absolutely. And I will say oh, go ahead.
I was saying the burden of being human is both, right? That bitter versus better, it's just internal. However, externally, what I do with that, right? If I make a positive impact somewhere, that's one thing, and that ripple effect. Or if I have a bitter thought or something else aligned in that genre of things, right? I take an action from there, then that ripple effect also goes out, and it's the opposite of what I'm committed to. So it's also that's priceless.
Well, and you just said it.
Yeah.
You just said it, is what are you committed to? Like, are you committed to adding to life in a positive way or a negative way? And it starts within ourselves. It's an inside job. And
it's a choice.
Yeah, it's a choice. And sometimes our choices bring us heartache, and sometimes our choices bring us joy. And that is on a daily basis, and sometimes on a moment basis. And I'm grateful on the days that I do have the perspective that it's happening for me, not to me, So,
and how often do I, as a human being, do I make a choice and I suffer through the results because the choice wasn't the bigger game, and then I blame the situation versus taking ownership of that situation and saying what I chose.
Well, and when you take ownership, you can do something about it. When you blame, you can't. Then it's on the other person. So yeah, it's all accountability and taking ownership for how we're feeling and why we're feeling. And again, it's without judgment. It's like, okay, I'm feeling this today. Like, I've gone through that same process this morning I'm just feeling it. I don't have to do anything about it. And how I'm feeling, is it impacting somebody else? If it is, how can I impact in a positive, not negative? Taking responsibility and being aware of all of that.
Just taking that to the next step. Someone once said that, I can't hurt myself without hurting others.
Right.
So even when I carry this perspective of thinking that, okay, I'm dealing with it, and I don't have the experience of it impacting the outside world, everybody else, everything else, in some perspectives, it still does. Right.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that.
And actually, that's like talking about purpose you started the call with, right? When I'm present to that, it gives me access to actually stepping into my purpose, because I'm not, like you said, commitment. I'm not committed to hurting anybody else. And my accountability to everybody and everything else many times doesn't allow me to stay, I think you use the word bitter, right? Doesn't allow me to stay bitter for too long, because I can clearly see it's impacting other people. So I may not shed bitterness for myself, but I'm much more likely to do it for somebody or something else, right? Being accountable to them or to that thing versus myself. It's so much easier that way for me.
And that's one of the things I love about what you do professionally. What I love, and we've talked about this before, is that you help. Look, if you're getting a negative result, back it up, right? Like, do the backup work to find out where that belief is, so that we can deal with the actions, right, that create the results. So if you're having a negative result, let's back it up. If you're having a positive result, let's back it up. Let's see what's causing the results. So I told you the other day, I'm like, you're basically a results coach. Like, you help people get the results that they want, not what they don't want. I mean, if it's not what you want, let's let's shift it. It's really a choice. It's a choice of being. Shift the being so that you have a different result on that end. And so I love that that's what you're focusing on in your coaching as well. And I appreciate the work that you're doing, because it matters. I know for me, when I met with you last week, I keep thinking about like this, because the word that you had me really focus on was compassion. Like, am I being compassionate in the interactions that I have, and in my thoughts towards other people and towards the people I love and the people around me? You know, it's really helped grounded me in how I've shown up this week. Not perfect.
Yeah, that's why we're human, right?
Yeah.
And now now that you left us with another nugget of compassion, and if I combine that with leaving people better than I found them, inside of compassion and empathy, right? And love and care, and all the words that fit that genre of that intention, right? I think, well, what an amazing outcome, right?
Exactly. Yep.
For myself and for everybody around me. So thank you for that. Thanks, and that's a beautiful way to wrap it up too. I appreciate you taking the time today and leaving us with compassion.
Well, good, because that's the compassionate thing to do, is to realize that every person matters.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't, every single person that you meet, and that includes yourself. Like,
starting with you. You can't, if my rock isn't strong enough, I can't pull anybody else up. So you're right.
I know, as they say, what is it that you can't give away what you don't have. You have to be able to have that compassion first before you give it to someone else. So
awesome.
Comes from within.
Talking about that, if people want more compassion, want more Becky Sampson, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, so I have two different websites. One is with my Only Subpoenas, where I do subpoenas for attorneys, helping them uncover stuff. That's onlysubpoenas.com, or my personal website that goes over my coaching and stuff like that. That's beckysampson.com. It's pretty easy. Or you can just Google me. I'm all over the place. So
thanks again for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and hope everybody has a great day.
You're welcome. Thank you.